Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, you sent us quite the challenge this time. We're looking at analyses of just 12 biblical verses.
Yeah.
And these are completely random, right? Pulled from Genesis, Psalms, Ezekiel, Luke, Revelation. I mean, really all over the map. Plus comparing different translations, King James, the Septuagint.
Yeah, the Thomson Septuagint versus the Masoretic base for the KJV.
So our job was to find patterns, but honestly, what the sources claim just jumped out. These verses, supposedly random, actually tell one single story, a coherent narrative arc. They're calling it the saga of the covenant seed.
It's pretty remarkable because it's not just, a sequence of events. There's a real trajectory here. The sources trace it from a divine promise, then through rebellion, then judgment, and landing finally in this moment of just total desperation.
Okay, let's unpack that arc. So promise first, that's
Right.
Genesis 22.17, right? The seed multiplying like sand and stars.
Yeah.
Huge scale.
Exactly. Immense potential. But then 2 Samuel 7.2 comes along and really narrows that down. It becomes about a specific royal lineage that God himself is establishing.
Got it. From vast people to a specific royal line,
Yeah.
but then things go wrong.
Inevitably, yes. The sources point directly to Ezekiel, chapter 2, verse 6. The people are called a rebellious house, or sometimes provoking house.
And that's not just like commentary.
No, it seems to drive the plot. It leads right into the next step. The prophetic sign in Ezekiel 4.2, the siege of Jerusalem, judgment follows rebellion.
So we've gone from this massive promise, stars and sand, down to national judgment, siege. How does it reach the absolute bottom, that point of desperation you mentioned?
Right, this is where the focus gets incredibly sharp. You have
Yeah.
to hold that original promise in your head, countless people, right?
Yeah, the multitudes.
Now look at Luke 8.42. All that potential, the whole covenant lineage. It gets condensed, distilled down to its most fragile point. One single person, a dying only daughter. She basically represents the entire covenant line right there, on the verge of extinction. It implies that survival itself needs a miracle.
Okay, and this is where the different translations come in, isn't it? How they handle the little details that either sharpen or maybe blur that focus on the one.
Exactly. This is fascinating. When you compare the Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew basis for the KJV, with the Septuagint, the Old Greek translation, you see these subtle but really crucial differences in emphasis.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Genesis 22.17, again, the promise about the seed's victory. The KJV reads that the seed will possess the gate of his enemies.
Is singular.
Right. That singular his keeps the tension, pointing towards potentially one specific victor, a messianic figure, a king. But if you look at Thomson's Septuagint translation, it says their enemies.
So plural, more generalized.
Yeah, it shifts the focus a bit, makes it more about the collective people's victory, less about a single descendant.
Interesting. And does that pattern hold elsewhere, like with the royal imagery?
It does. Look at Ezekiel 17.22. It talks about this branch taken from a high cedar. The KJV uses the phrase tender one.
One, singular again, suggests a person.
A specific individual figure being planted, yeah. Now, compare that. The Septuagint's version of that same passage, it talks about cropping off hearts.
Hearts, plural.
Plural and very metaphorical. It doesn't have that same sharp focus on a single heir. So the argument is that the traditional Hebrew text, as reflected in the KJV in these spots, really aligns more tightly with this narrative arc, this progressive narrowing from a whole nation down to one key messianic figure.
So taking a step back,
Yeah.
what's the big takeaway here? We started with what looked like random verses.
Right, totally disconnected.
And the analysis suggests they actually form this incredibly coherent, seemingly purposeful story. Non-random. All about the destiny of this specific lineage.
And critically, the story doesn't just end in that moment of desperation. It actually prescribes the covenant response to crisis. Look at Psalm 77.5. It talks about the discipline of actively remembering ancient years. You have to look back.
And what should we remember?
Well, Exodus 18.8 gives the content. You recount all the past acts of deliverance. Everything the Lord has already done. Hope is anchored in history.
That makes sense. The saga seems to show again and again that when things look absolutely bleakest for the promised seed, whether it's Abraham on the mountain ready to sacrifice his son, or this girl on her deathbed,
Yeah, the lowest point.
deliverance doesn't come from human striving. It comes from God acting directly,
Yeah.
like a gardener pruning and planting,
Yeah.
sovereign action.
Exactly. So if the story itself tells us that the anchor in crisis is always remembering history, remembering past deliverance, it leaves us with a question, doesn't it? What are the definitive days of old for us? What specific recounted acts of God should we be actively remembering today to find our footing in whatever crises we face?